From I-526 to the Naval Hospital, I sit down exclusively with Charleston County Council Chairman Vic Rawl for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Vic Rawl.
Yes, sir.
It's so good to see you.
It's a pleasure.
Likewise. Let me take you to last night, the Charleston County Financial Committee.
Yes.
Over in North Charleston, and you guys basically deferred the decision on the Naval Hospital.
Correct.
What is the future of that hospital in your mind?
Well, the original reason for getting involved with that process and that project was to provide a one-stop shop for social services for all citizens in Charleston County, whether that be state, but mostly county. They owed us all sorts of facilities and services. The parking is fantastic. The location is central. You don't have to go to the peninsula, which is becoming a serious traffic issue. And of course, the spatial concept in terms of the amount of square feet necessary to handle pretty much all of our programs, processes, and services is available there. And the public transportation is good. All those reasons still make it a viable project. The cost has gotten astronomical. We never intended to buy that building. We were forced into it by virtue of the activities involving the court and the original landlord that we were dealing with. But at this point in time, my main concern is making absolutely certain that county's decisions, council's decisions, whatever they may be, are based on fact, data, need, cost analysis. In other words, the hard data, not ideology, not based on economic development or what North Charleston or City of Charleston or Mount Pleasant wants, but what we need to deal with, whether that's expensive or less expensive. Those are decisions that have to be made, and I want to make sure they're made not based on anything other than fact, projection, and need.
Let me take you to last week. This is a headline from Channel 5. Governor Henry McMaster calls for approval of I-526 extension over James Johns Island. So who moves the chess next?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what his appointees do. He has two appointees, including Chairman White. I'm not going to get into my discussions with Chairman White because, quite frankly, they're semi-private and, realistically speaking, they're contract negotiations. But I've been involved with them for some time. And the bank's position has always been, at least in the last 3 years, show us the money. And whether they have that right under the three-party contract or not is not worth getting into. We have tried to accommodate their desire, and we can't do it. And the reason we can't do it is there's no way to bind any legislative body, whether it's the city council, county council, legislature, whatever, future, except by contract. So we've offered over and over and over to look at amending the contract to clearly state who owes what to whom and to bind future bodies to be able to pay for that. We've always realized and recognized that even on the original contract, we were supposed to pay $117,000 toward state highway projects. We've exceeded that greatly already. The cost of the project, in all of its speculation and projection, nobody has gone out of the public bidding process to find out exactly what it would cost. But the costs have gone up, no question about that. Look at the construction of everything in the Tri-County area and the state. So where we are right now is whether or not the governor's two appointees will take his desire to heart and determine whether or not this project should move forward. I've always maintained it should move forward. I think, quite frankly, it's rather schizophrenic for the local population to say the other parts of 526 were necessary, the Ravenel Bridge was necessary, the James Island Connector was necessary, the Isle of Palms Connector was necessary. The only one that I really recall being fought over greatly by the anti-growth, conservation, etc. people was the James Island Connector. The rest of them, I don't remember a great deal of controversy. I can even remember the controversy whether or not to bring Interstate 26 into the Peninsula City as opposed to having it branch off in North Charleston toward West Ashley and Mount Pleasant. Whatever the case may be, at this point in time, he's absolutely right. We've reached critical mass, and critical mass means that, from his point of view, as I understand it, that the safety of the citizenry on Kiowa, Seabrook, Wadmalaw, Johns Island, James Island, Folly Beach, and to some extent St. Andrews, is critically impacted by whether or not we have an additional access route out of Charleston for hurricane evacuation or other emergencies. I think it's also interesting to note, even though he did not state so, that at this point in time, our latest traffic count numbers on the Jalagatas Bridge, which is the Stoner River Bridge, is right at 31,000 trips a day. On the Limehouse Bridge, which is the bridge on Main Road, is now pushing 28,500 trips a day. That's an awful lot of trips. If you will remember correctly, 526 Mount Pleasant, one span, carries about 30,000 trips a day. Now, of course, there are two spans, so it's probably 60,000 for the total bridge. But we're getting there. I mean, that's pretty dadgum substantial numbers. And he's right. There's no real way to fix the traffic issue, in my opinion. West Ashley, Johns Island, James Island, Wadmalaw is really not that big a deal in terms of growth, but obviously those people that live on Wadmalaw that would have to evacuate are certainly the same as Kiowa and Seabrook. So I think it's very helpful, and I look forward to seeing whether or not his decisions, missives, instructions to his appointees change the momentum and improve the discussions and hopefully resolution of the problem.
You talked earlier about 526 in Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Obviously, we just had the traffic problem there.
Correct.
When you first heard about that, what was going to your mind?
I don't really recall any specific impression except to realize that the amount of growth in Mount Pleasant and Daniel Island and the Wando Bridge, the John Holt Bridge, the Ravenel Bridge, and there are really only two routes directly from Mount Pleasant / Daniel Island / King Hoyt to come, unless they go up 41 through Monk's Corner, back over to 26 and coming back, which frankly we had to do in the dark ages when my family had a place at Sullivan's Island, and that time Cook River Bridge got hit by a boat, and Daddy, who was a doctor that practiced downtown Charleston, literally had to run from Sullivan's Island all the way around Monk's Corner to get to work. And that was the only route. So the trauma, the traffic, the growth are all pointed out. As to the construction of the bridge, as to whether or not it was the right design to pick, I don't know enough about engineering to decide that. I simply would say that obviously it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed for a multitude of reasons. Needless to say, at least one of them is good luck.
And let me get back over to the islands.
Sure.
Obviously, there's been a discussion about the Maybank Highway project, specifically with the Pitchfork project.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
We've got some issues with that, and there always have been issues. Historically, the first half-cent sales tax that Charleston County passed had what we called bonded projects included. Those bonded projects were projects that were specifically directed to specific areas. Maybank Highway, from Main Road all the way to the Jalagatas Bridge, was a bonded project. In other words, Maybank Highway, even in those days, was supposed to be 4-laned, period. In those days, under the auspices of the statutory authority of the Highway Department, municipalities had the right to object, direct, possibly engineer projects to suit them. The city of Charleston objected to 4-laning Maybank Highway. They didn't want that. They also objected to 4-laning Maybank Highway from River Road to the bridge, when in essence the Highway Department had already had the monies and the project when they rebuilt and improved the Jelligatus Bridge over the Stone River. Both those were stopped by the then administration of the city of Charleston. The planning and zoning crowd of the city of Charleston, on one side, was involved in developing and negotiating a PUD, Planned Urban Development, for the Kerr family. On the other side, there was growth, but I don't recall there being a planned urban development. The planners and zoners of the city of Charleston were utilizing a platform methodology theory of interconnectivity, meaning that if you could interconnect subdivisions in such a fashion to keep the internal subdivision folk from going onto main arteries, you would reduce the necessity for improving and building major arteries. I.e., if I'm living in subdivision A and I can go through subdivision B to pick up my dry cleaners or my prescriptions or take my child to school, I wouldn't have to get out on an interstate or a main artery. That was their theory. And that's what dreamed up the pitchfork concept. In other words, don't build or widen Maybank Highway, but we'll go through the Kerr property and we'll go through the other side and we will avoid the intersection of Maybank and River and try to flow traffic not through that intersection but through the two connector roads. What they never took into consideration that I can think of is what that would do to an additional intersection on Maybank Highway between River Road and the bridge, number one. Number two, I don't know if there are any traffic counts that realistically took that into consideration. Remember, as much as I like the city of Charleston, they don't build roads. They don't have the kind of engineering and traffic counts that Charleston County and SCDOT have. So that was their purpose. The problems we've run into are fairly numerous. Number one, the expense. Number two, the wetlands issue. Number three, the permitting process. And quite frankly, number four, what impact does new intersection on Maybank Highway have, and whether it's simply moving the problem from Maybank and River to closer to the bridge or not. We'll build the northern pitchfork. We've overcome most of those problems. The latest one, and frankly, was where the northern pitchfork interconnects with River Road, and where it is supposed to connect, the city of Charleston has just granted an access, gotten it approved by the highway department for a new subdivision. It's right across the street from where the northern pitchfork was supposed to terminate on River. Well, that causes a choke point and a connection and an issue, and the highway department said, we can't do that. So I think we've overcome that issue. We've overcome most of the permitting issue. A classic example of conflict between infrastructure construction and planning and zoning from a city standpoint is the city even was planning on allowing traffic parking on the pitchforks. If the purpose of the pitchfork is to move traffic and to alleviate the congestion on intersection at Maybank and River, what in the world are you doing designing parking places on that route? That was something else we didn't know about. And no one has given us a projection of the traffic count or how the intersection of Northern onto Maybank Highway, just short of the Jelligatus Bridge, how is that going to impact? So we think we're going to finish Northern. We think we've overcome most of those problems, although there's still some issues. Southern is another thing altogether. The money's not been allocated for it. The permitting is a lot more difficult, a lot more wetland. And yeah, there's an issue with maybe it will impact upon the connectivity of 526 as it's ever built. But that really is not an issue because we can go around that. So there's a serious question on Southern. Northern, I think, will be built.
And let me take you to the Postal Courier. This is an opinion headline from R. Cantrell with the Coastal Conservation League and Bill Saunders. It reads this: spending shift threatens Greenbelt's success. Can you set the record straight about the Greenbelt?
Yeah, happily. The Greenbelt is something that Charleston County citizens wanted, but most of the Coastal Conservation League and the land trusts wanted to try to protect some of the green space in Charleston County. It's using basically public money to buy property or, in essence, to purchase easements to protect property from growth. So Greenbelt is designed to basically counteract growth. In the past, on the first half-cent sales tax, the percentage of funds that were dedicated to different activities, 30% was to go to municipalities and cities and 70% to rural. We pretty much achieved that in the first half-cent sales tax, although there is some left. The second half-cent sales tax, there is some serious discussion as to whether or not at this point in time that ratio needs to be different. Classic example, we've purchased a lot of land, we've gotten a lot of easements. Some of those easements really protect the public view from growth, from density, from eyesores of buildings, things of that nature. Some of it is in the middle of nowhere that no public citizen can walk on, or frankly would have to hike into the Netherlands to be able to find it, much less utilize it. So there is a question, from a political standpoint as to whether or not the green belt is designed to protect any and all property regardless of whether the public has access to it or whether it actually protects the public's view of congestion or other things, and that's an issue. The other issue in the split, I think the new half-cent sales tax advisory board has suggested a 50-50 split. And there's a reason for that, because with the growth that we've got, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, Peninsula, West Axley, Johns Island, especially those in the municipal areas, well, if we're going to deal with pocket parks or regular parks or lifestyle protections of green space for those areas, then perhaps we should assign more funds for it in terms of percentage of the Greenbelt money. The other issue that will arise is when you've got nature type parks that are basically walking trails, maybe you've got a viewing area, but realistically it's strictly urban with very little amenity. Well, rural with very little amenity. If you go in urban, you're going to need some walking trails. You might have to put gravel on the trail. You may have to build it up. You may have to put a bridge across it. You're going to have bathrooms. You probably ought to have some sort of picnic type shelter. And right now the Greenbelt doesn't allow for that. So there may be some movement afoot to include those sort of amenities within that funding process for Greenbelt in urban areas. So the shift is on a little bit. And to be honest with you, we achieved a lot on the rural side of the first half-cent sales tax. We didn't achieve nearly as much with the 30% on the municipal side. So there is a focus perhaps on utilizing green space money, green belt money, more in an urban environment, since that's where most of the people are.
Hey, let me take you to Foley Camp Road. What's your update on the improvements there?
I really don't know a great deal about Foley and Camp. My understanding is that the improvements on those turning lanes are successful. The one that I am most familiar with, which I think I'm not a big proponent of intersection improvements, mainly because my common sense tells me you improve one intersection, all you do is push the congestion to the next intersection. Maybe that's a whole fogey type theory, but I've seen it.
Okay.
So, but I've seen one that was redone by us recently that has worked very well, and that's the intersection of 61 and 7, where you put 2 left-hand turn lanes on both sides, or all sides. And that has substantially improved the traffic flow there. And I am presuming, without completely knowing, that Foley and Camp is going to achieve the same.
Chairman Vic Rawl, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
It's my pleasure, sir. It really is.
Likewise.
Okie doke.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Take care.
You too.